Well, welcome back, everybody. This is episode number, I got to get this right, 44 of the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. So we have got Dussex with us, Scotty's in the shop, and we have another special guest with us. On this episode, we have got Shawn Murphy joining us. And so, Shawn, the reason we wanted to talk to you, one is just we really had a couple good conversations about Time Attack lately. And you've done a lot in the realm of Time Attack. And you are one of these people that is famous or infamous, or a little bit of both, for having a car that really makes people just scratch their heads. And Scotty is kind of moving down that path and is kind of, having some more and more people come up to him just like, how are you doing what you're doing? How's your car going as fast as it is?
Yeah.
And you kind of kicked off that whole movement and have definitely kind of been a little bit of an inspiration for us, for Dussex especially, I think, and for Subaru people in general. And so that's where I wanted to start is just kind of talk about maybe first and foremost how you found Time Attack or how you gravitated towards Time Attack. And then I definitely want to pick your brain about kind of the process or the development process of your car and kind of how you got it to do what it does.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of oddly, I started out in motocross. I've always liked cars and bikes and stuff like that, but I raced motocross for a while and kind of realized that got a little dangerous and
Sure.
have a mortgage to pay. So I'm like, you know what? Best option after that would be road course racing on motorcycles because that seems super safe. So
way safe, yeah.
Yeah. So I did that for a little bit, and that turned out to be a little dangerous as well. And I was actually, at the time, I was using my Subaru. It had a hitch on it, and I would trailer my bike down to the track, and that's what I'd use to race. It was my daily. But after the bike stuff and getting more family oriented, I'm like, I probably should do something a little safer. So that's when I just got into the Subaru, and we did a thing called Winter Cross out the track when it was Miller. And we just raced in the winter or whatever the conditions were on track we run. And it got to the point where I'm like, I want to take this more serious. And we did a thing called Lap Battle, which was essentially just like NASA, just with really no rules at all. So it was a kind of a Wild West scenario out there. And they got rid of that. And that's when I jumped to NASA. And I just started kind of doing what most Subaru guys do is they kind of overbuild a car for the street. They make it ridiculous power, but they forget about aero and brakes and wheels, and tires. And so that's kind of how it all started, just from motocross all the way into realizing that cars are probably the better option.
Sure. Well, and so, I mean, getting involved in NASA, how is it that you kind of got pulled from that into the Time Attack realm? Was it just that was kind of like the first point where you could be competitive with the car, or was there a different kind of draw to that kind of event?
I really like Time Attack just because the wheel-to-wheel guys, I wasn't interested in doing that, especially with the Subaru in particular. It wasn't exactly the most reliable platform. You get 3-4 real good laps in it, and the car already started to heat soak and get hot and act up a bit. And I really didn't want to wreck the car. And so I'm like, Time Attack was I dug it just because it was these wild, crazy cars that were you could do whatever you wanted, essentially, just pick the class you wanted to fit into. And I really like that aspect of it, where you just go out there and you could do a flyer, and then you could do a couple cool down laps. And it wasn't like, it was stressful, but it wasn't. So you kind of got to just go out there and do your own thing.
Sure. Well, and you don't have to worry as much about the other cars on track. You're not competing for position.
Exactly.
Less physical wear and tear on the car, at least hopefully.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Well, and then so once you decided that you wanted to compete in Time Attack, like what was your first plan like for the build of the car? Like how did you kind of start moving in that direction?
Honestly, with that, it was pretty basic stuff. It was like, the basic Cobb bolt-on stuff, a little bit bigger turbo, and like brake pads. And I thought I was gonna be set, and I was gonna go out there and just, I was gonna do so good. And I remember the first couple events having Miatas just walk all over me. And I'm like, first thing in my head, I'm like, nah, they're cheating. There's no way that thing's got to have 500 horse. I have like 350. And that's when it really woke me up to it's a lot of it's not necessarily about the car. It's just about the driver and figuring out their car. And it really humbles you out real quick. And so it was really basic build stuff, minor suspension stuff. and just had my butt handed to me by Miatas out there, and realizing that there's a lot more involved than just bolting on some power and thinking you have sticky tires at the time.
Isn't that such a funny wake up call? It's just like, this car's amazing. I'm going to go out there and just kill it. And then, the Miatas. I think the first one that really blew my mind was an EK Civic that just he embarrassed me. And that was one of those things. Like, I guess I really need to figure out how to actually drive this thing.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and so how did you kind of? It sounds like maybe you focused on progressing as a driver then. Like, did you just try and get more seat time, or?
I've always, I think my biggest problem is I'm such a car guy. I love building cars. I have a 72 Chevelle, and I've built that up, and that I love modifying things. I love building. And so that kind of took over, but I would take steps forward, I thought, but they're really just steps backwards. At one point I was making almost 600 wheel horse. I thought I had good, R1 on their tire, and had some BC coilovers, and I would do stuff I'd research on the internet aero wise. And I thought I was going the right direction, but every time I would try to go big power is what it seemed like, I just got slower. I mean, I'd have awesome, front straight speeds, but the car was just terrible. And it took me, and I don't know if it's just because I was just ignorant to the fact, but it took me probably 2 years, 3 years maybe of taking those steps of just trying to fix the car constantly, because I just pushing it so hard with all the power to realize that that's not what you need. And I had so many good coaches out there, like from, Cole Powelson and one of the guys who run NASA out there, Matt Guyver. They would always tell me, it's like, you need good tires and you need to drop your power down. It's like, you're going to be in a class where you're going against, Super Trofeo Lamborghinis, and I'm not going to beat those cars. So once I started listening to them is when it made a huge difference. I went down from like 600 wheel horse to like 430. And at that power level was where I was, breaking track records and going the fastest I've ever gone. When they're like, you need a better tire. And I'm like, well, everyone says a Hoosier A7 is great. And before I was running R1s that had like 35 heat cycles on them. And that would be like the front left, and the right rear would have 10. And I didn't know the difference. I had no idea it mattered. And so once I started actually listening to the veterans out there, and they had my best interest at heart, is when the times dramatically, started to drop. And I think once I got that figured out is when I could actually focus on suspension setup and better dampers on there, and actually doing real aero on there, not just like my first splitter was a welcome to Wyoming sign that I got from the highway department that I cut up. And it worked great to hit cones with, but not exactly functional.
Gotcha. Man, that is such a good point to make, that if you're slower than another car, like as a car guy, it's just so easy to gravitate towards power. Like, well, I'm just not as fast as these guys. They're beating me by 2, 3, 4 seconds. I must need more power. And you had some good coaches there to kind of like, well, try this out, try that out. It's
absolutely
those things like brakes, tires, and suspension are the kinds of things that when they work, they really work, but you might not be as aware of them.
Exactly.
Brakes, maybe a lesson. Like when brakes don't work, alarm bells usually go off pretty quickly. But like with suspension, if it's working, it's very easy to kind of miss that detail. But then once you figure out how big of a deal suspension is and tires are, and it's like you can't go back. These 36 heat cycle, like 10-year-old R1s or whatever, and a brand new set of Hoosiers, it's like this is a night and day difference. You can't go back to that.
Yep. Very
cool. Well, and then so once you kind of got that package together, once you realized, okay, well, these are the things that are priorities. Like, did everything kind of fall together pretty quickly, or was there still a lot of development of the car that had to take place from that point on?
Actually, it did fall together pretty quick. It was like in 2016 is when I started to get the car to just work properly for me. I got the suspension set up with Cole's help, and the tire pressure stuff figured out. And once that happened, it was strange. There was track records that I figured I would never get, and they were from great drivers, and I would get them by 3 seconds. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then the next event, I would get the next track record, and then the next track record. And then in 2017, I was beating all my track records, and the only changes to the car I made was seat time. Like, I think in 2017, I didn't touch the car. I did oil changes, made sure it all ran good, and just got seat time and listened to everything. I would pull out my little Solo Pro and have them go over the data. And they would, the guys at Life would be like, this is what you need to change here. A guy named Chris Stone used to work for Life, great driver. There was one session, he just looked at it and said, okay, right here on this corner, you're braking terrible. He goes, I don't know why you're braking like this. I kept destroying. I was boiling Castrol SRF. And they're like, you can't boil that. I'm like, well, obviously you can. And I'm like, well, maybe it's just a car. It's Subaru. I know it's heavy. And they're like, no, you're doing this wrong. And literally just tell me how to brake better. I went out there and took a 1.5 seconds off my time. And it was just those little things where how we talked about how you said it's so easy to throw power at the car because you can feel that as a direct correlation. You picked up 10 miles an hour, not straight. And you feel the power pull you. But to just brake a little different, it didn't feel different to me. But it obviously translated into a faster time. And so it really did fall together pretty quick once I got out of the mindset of just throwing stuff at the car. I really needed to throw stuff at myself to just become a better driver.
Wow. That is that is not an easy place to get to, but once you kind of have that realization, that's when big changes can happen for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
That it is so easy to blame the car and blame the equipment.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, like you said, with the tires and suspension and stuff, there's a threshold where that works, but it's everybody, you're in that car together out there on the track, and you as the driver, you've got to make sure that you're using the car to the fullest of its ability as well. And that is sometimes, for some of us, that is a hard realization to discover.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to really look past yourself. I've raced with a lot of guys out there who are pretty new, but they have a little bit of money, and they'll go out there with an old Pirelli race car. When I say old, like 2 years old, and I mean we're talking a $500,000 car at the time, and I beat them in the Subaru, and they get upset and they're like, "Well, you're cheating, you're doing something," and it's like, man, I just have a lot more seat time. It's like once you figure it out, and some of those guys now, once they did figure it out, they're actually doing pro and pro-am races.
Sure.
And it just took them to get like a good trainer coach, and some would actually teach them how to drive better. But it's hard for certain people to get out of that mindset where they're like, obviously it's not me, it's something with the car, or that driver's cheating, or that stuff gets thrown out a lot when it's not. Like we're all competitive people in this sport, and we get a little cocky, I think. And once we can reflect and look back and be like, you know what, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am, and I can start listening to other people.
Well, and one of the funny details, kind of like back to your breaking point, like, and my guess is that when they were focusing on one corner and saying, change the way that you're using the brakes in this corner, my guess is that for that time you were kind of rethinking the way that you're applying the brakes for the whole lap. So not specifically just that corner. Yep. But when you have an experience like that, it can be, hopefully, if you're open to it, it can be an aha moment to realize, well, wait a minute, if I'm using the car differently here, I'm carrying more speed in, or I'm lifting off on the brake more sooner, so I'm carrying more speed through, and just feeling what that does. Like those kind of experiences can, if you realize it, are telling you like how you put input into the car in terms of steering, in terms of brake, in terms of throttle. All of those inputs have an effect on your overall lap time.
Yeah.
And so that's again is one of these really fine detail points that can sometimes be something that's difficult to comprehend or difficult to figure out. But I mean, it sounds like, geez, 1.5 seconds, like once you figured it out, you just moved right along and on to the next thing. Yeah,
it really was it was a eye-opening moment when he showed me that. Like I said, it was one corner, but I applied it to every corner there. And once I felt, because to give you the idea what I was doing before, when I was braking, I would come into a corner and I would ease on the brakes, and when I got slowed down enough, I'd let off instantly, and I would just throw the car, like it would start to oversteer on me and stuff. And they're like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "You need to get hard on those brakes and then release slow." And they're like, "When you think you're releasing slow enough, release slower." Like, because I promise you, you're still going too quick. And the moment I did that, it was so frustrating. So I'm like, man, I cannot let off any slower. I know I'm slowing my times down. And that one lap was 1.5 seconds. And once I realized that, they kind of told me, well, focus on what the car does when you do that. Get hard on the brakes, shoot that front down. And then when you start releasing, if you needed the rear to come down a little more, maybe come off a little quicker, get the car to rotate. And once I understood how it wasn't like with my Chevelle. Come in the corner, get on the gas, I can rotate that car wherever I want.
Sure.
Well, obviously on the Subaru, it doesn't quite work that way. And so once I realized how the car worked and how braking and steering handling inputs were allowing the car just to flow through a corner, it was a world of difference for me.
Shawn, what corner was that?
So if you're on, let's go to West Track, and you're on the back straight, so it's going to be corner number 4. So I can't remember. It's not. I don't think it's Black Rock, but it's when you're on the back straight of one of the fastest straights there, and it's like a 180 left, and so it's almost like a little double apex right there. And that was where I was just hard on the brake, but it was weird because I'd be on it easy, and then super hard, and then let off instantly. And that was probably one of the worst corners to do it because it is almost a double apex corner. So then I'd be flooring it and then almost have to get on the brakes again. And honestly, it was a mess. And it was almost embarrassing to show them the data sometimes because they're all such great drivers over at Life. And it's like, man, they're all family to me. I'm like, man, they're going to be so like disappointed in what I'm doing.
Me and Scotty do that with each other all the time. We're always disappointing each other.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the hallmarks of a great instructors, which it sounds like. I mean, you are very fortunate enough to work with. Is that they know that there's a process, that there's a progression for everybody, and like all of these things, everybody has to find them out and figure them out in their own way. So I guess I would say never be too afraid of showing your data. Because I mean, if they're giving you grief about it, then maybe you should show it to somebody else.
Yeah, and I definitely am. I'll definitely show anyone at Life, and Cole and Chris both. Like they will look at all my stuff whenever I get a chance because I'm not embarrassed anymore. Before I was timid about it, and I didn't want. I'm like, I'll just figure it out. I'll ask questions, but that's not how it works. And so once I kind of got over the fact that you're not as good as you think you might be, go ahead and show them this data, and then they're like, wow. This is what you need to do, make changes. It's like, oh, they're not being dicks. Cool. And then it just flows after that.
Yeah. And so a lot of this change, this was in like the 2017, where you said you basically almost didn't touch anything on the car and you just focused on seat time.
Yep.
And so from the beginning of 2017 to the end of 2017, without really changing anything on the car, I mean, can you kind of quantify how much time you picked up or how much faster you were at the end versus the beginning?
I want to say, because I mean, since the R track has 4, tracks out there, most people talk about outer loop because it's kind of everyone's favorite.
Sure.
I went from the point of running, like I was like hopeful to break the 2-minute mark. Everyone wants to do a 1:59.9. That's our goal. And I barely touched it. And by the end, I did a 57 flat.
Wow.
And there was nothing changed on the car. Like I did one alignment, I think, that year. And I know the alignment was off by the end of the year. And I just didn't want to mess with them. Like the car's working. I want to focus on me and how I feel in the car. And so I didn't touch anything. And so it definitely made a big difference.
Man, that's awesome. 3 seconds.
Yeah.
To a time that, like, going into the year, you're probably just like, if 1:59.8, 1:59.7, you're looking for tenths. And you knocked off 3 seconds just by technique and analyzing your data and finding different ways to use the car.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That was at 430 horsepower.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I was just out there last month, whatever, for the enduro. And so I drive in TT3, and we got out there Friday night and basically did the track walk. Austin Kent basically gave me a bunch of pointers, and that's another person that is for a TT3. What is it? E46 M3.
He is fast.
He is flying. I mean, 203s out there, and I mean, I think he's making
280 or 290 horse,
something like right there.
Yeah.
And I mean, he has figured that car out, and he has definitely spent a lot of time on progression, but after our first session on Saturday, he was like 4th or 5th fastest overall out of almost 40 competitors.
Yep.
And so the fact that a TT3 car is getting down to what his new personal best at a 203 something, and so with 150 extra horsepower, 157s are possible out there.
Oh,
and it's just nuts.
Yeah. Austin is an amazing, he's such a humble guy. And I've watched him kind of go through the paces of just figuring his car out and stuff. And it's weird. He kind of came out of nowhere because he doesn't brag. He doesn't talk much about himself. He doesn't talk himself up. And he kind of came out of nowhere with his BMW. And then it was literally within a couple of years, like he's the fastest guy out there in that class. And I mean, and even in like TT2, you can put him out there in TT2 days, and heck, even some TT1 days. There's guys out there that he still walks over. So yeah, he's a great guy to learn anything from.
Man, it just goes to show that like you can't. It's so easy to equate power and what the lap time should be, and if you have that in your head, then that can really get in the way of like, thinking what's possible or pushing yourself to like really trying to extract the maximum performance out of the car and out of yourself as the driver, because you're just like, there's no way I could do anything faster than a 205 if I'm so down on power to these guys. But if you just get that out of your head and just really try and focus on the car and what you're doing, like it's crazy what sometimes is possible.
Exactly.
Well, and so go ahead. Sorry, Dussex.
So Shawn, I saw your car like in the beginning of 2018, I want to say, or the middle of 2018. And man, that thing is like still light years ahead of my car, my blue car is right now. And it's just, I remember seeing it with the big tires. I think it was just chilling on 295s or 305s, almost smooth bottom, big wings, like I'd like to hear like the evolution, like from even in 2018, where the car is at, like how it's moved even from then and there.
Yeah. So, from 2018 up, it was kind of a rough go of it. Had a couple of engine problems, had some weird, unique failures. The motor was pretty worn out after 17. That was I think that motor went 3 seasons, and it ended up throwing a rod. And so 2018, after we got the motor all fixed up, is when I ended up having a kid, and so that definitely slowed things down a little bit more. So 2018, 2019 slowed down a lot for me. But evolution wise of the car, I kind of just made things tried to make things more reliable, really. Aero wise, I did a little bit different front splitter. The wing stayed the same, had the same flares, still ran the 315s, brakes didn't change. Honestly, it was more motor stuff, reliability stuff, making it more efficient cooling wise, changing some ducting up on the radiator, little things like that is all I really did. So the evolution had changed. Right now, though, after my little incident I had in the car, I'll be posting some stuff up about that, and so will Life, a little before and after. The car's made drastic changes. I think you'll dig it, Ryan. It's pretty wild looking. It's got some way new aero. The car's going to run the same power, stuff like that, but the aero's way different on it, and it should. I've already done a little maiden voyage last weekend of its first run, and surprisingly it ran solid. And this is probably the first time I've ever felt aero that worked. It was weird. I mean, obviously, you can tell your wing works. You can feel the drag on it a little bit and the rear downforce, but never had a splitter that I could feel doing something. And this is the first time I can get the car up to like 120 and it starts to get stable. Like it feels planted.
Wow.
So it's pretty wild. So hopefully this week I'll get some photos out there of what it's ugly. It ain't the prettiest car right now, but I think it's going to be functional.
And then none of that matters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's actually better that way, because then it's like, how did you beat me in that? And especially when it looks like rough, how is it that you're beating me in this rough looking car?
Exactly.
Well, so you kind of breeze past it, but I want to hit on it. So you're running 315 tires.
Yes.
Right now, what did you come up to? Like, did you go from 295s to 315s, or like, how did you make the decision to put that enormous of a tire on the car?
So I went from a 275. Wow. And I was talking to Matt Guyver out there, and I'm like, okay, so based off our rules and everything, I'm like, what do you think I should do? A smaller full slick or the biggest DOT slick I can run? He's all, well, you're not going to get contingencies for a full slick. So he goes, go with the biggest, DOT you can fit on that car. And I honestly probably could have went smaller just because my wheel itself is only a 10.5. I believe Hoosier recommends an 11-inch wide for that 315. Even talking with Hoosier though, they're like, it's gonna be a minimal difference, so it's nothing to worry about. But I kind of went just as big as I possibly could, and so I threw the 315 on there and had to make a couple fender changes, a couple adjustments. And literally the moment I did that, I think the very first day I ran those Hoosiers, I didn't even know what tire pressures to run. I was totally guessing. And I think I picked up my first lap was a little over a second faster than I've ever gone.
Wow.
And it's like, wow. And so, yeah, the Hoosiers were, in my opinion, they are probably the best cheating tire you could ever have. Sure. They are easily the best tire on the planet.
Wow. And now when you went to the 315s, were there any other changes other than just clearancing? Like, did you have to adjust any kind of braking? Did you have braking issues with it because now you've got all this extra grip? Or was it pretty much just bolt on this big tire and then it just kind of all fell into place?
No, I had to completely relearn again. All my braking zones were different. I was finding myself coming in, it's like off the front straight. I mean, my car's, it's kind of a brick. So I'll be touching 137, 140. And I would start braking and I'm like, okay, well now I'm almost stopped and I'm not even in the corner yet. Just those tires, they would stop you so quick. So I had to relearn every brake zone. And same thing with like when I could start applying throttle, how I was trail braking, everything changed. And so it took a little bit to figure it out. I think it probably took me, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 days to get it sorted. But once I did, it was second nature.
Sure. Wow.
And so how much, like, I don't know, it's kind of a weird question, but how much more mechanical grip, like, can you quantify like from a 275 to a 315 just on mechanical grip alone? Like I know you have to relearn how to use all that extra grip, but I mean, if you had to say like maybe you picked up 10, 12 extra miles per hour in a corner because of that, is there a way you can quantify that at all?
It'd be tough just because the 275s I went from were the BFGR ones. And so I never had a Hoosier beforehand.
Okay.
The biggest thing I noticed though with going to that Hoosier, and I don't necessarily even believe it's the size of the Hoosier. I think it's just compound. Because I think I could probably run a 295 and be almost just as quick with it. There was times, and now I understand why all my instructors back in the day would like, do not put a slick on your car until you figured the car out because it'll make you a worse driver. Yeah. And I get it because there was corners I was just goofing off in, and I was flying through them. And I didn't even have to be knowledgeable of how the car worked just because the car hooked up. It went where you wanted it to go. And so it's wild how sticky and grippy those 315 Hoosiers are. And so it definitely makes sense why they tell people don't start with a slick. Like get a street tire that's an ultra summer performance tire, because these slicks they're going to teach you some bad habits.
Yeah. Well, and in part is because like when you have a tire that is not that grippy, there is the one best line will be the fastest line, but then every other line, if you're not really hitting and using that tire perfectly, the fall off is pretty significant.
Exactly.
And so like once you finally figure out what the best line is through the corner, you could really feel that difference, and then you realize, okay, well now that worked. But then if you have a tire that's so grippy like that, I mean, you could like almost do like just completely wrong lines to the corner, but to a certain extent, you've got so much grip.
Yeah.
The car is just going to do whatever you're asking it to do, and it won't feel that much different.
Yep. Until
you get like really like towards the limit, but that limit with those slicks is way higher. So it takes a lot more like experience and we'll say maybe courage to get to that point with the slick tire.
Yeah.
I tell you, courage is a good word to use because, I don't know if anybody knows or not, but seriously, Shawn's car has definitely been an inspiration on my car. I mean, it's on 315s now, and, there might be some blue-green, throwbacks to the old Murphy mobile, but I mean, when I put the 315 AL52s on and took it out to like Road America, and as soon as it was dry, I was like, what the fuck is this? And then I went to NCM, a track I'd been at a couple of years, consecutively. Like the car was so scary, like so frightening. It was like this whole, like it jumped so much just with the tires that it was this terrifying thing. I mean, it was awesome, but it was like my body was feeling stuff that had never, ever felt before just with the tire change, like with the width change and all that stuff. I mean, there's definitely a lot of truth into it for sure.
A lot more grip in the corners and such. carry a lot more speed.
I mean, at NCM, which I think was like the best comparison for me, pretty much the same power when I went there the year before. I had picked up, I think, 7 seconds with just the tires and the weight reduction. So, like, for me, I that was like a shocking amount, of change for a car. So
it was, especially for such relatively minimal changes. I mean, just adding a much bigger tire, more grip, and taking a little bit of weight off, and that's a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm jealous over here. I'm still rocking a 245 Hoosier. This is my first year actually on an A7. I've been running the R7s for a few years, but this was the first year I put on an A7. And I mean, just that in itself, from the R to the A, was a huge change. Like you talked about, like figuring out braking points. You know, just on a 245 from an R to an A, as like stopping, at turn in. But so I mean, I couldn't imagine, stepping up from a 245 to anything like a 305.
315. Yeah. It is a huge difference. Oh man. Well, and so Shawn, you said something else that was interesting to me. So you're, even for now, the build of the car or the adjustments you're making in the car, still reliability is one of your main considerations.
Yeah.
So as somebody that, I mean, you work on car, you're not shy to work on the car. Why is reliability such a priority for your race car?
Probably twofold. When I first started, the car was just constantly having issues and concerns. And I learned that every time that happens, you're missing on seat time. You can't get out there. You're dealing with a car that's breaking up or losing oil pressure, or, your PCV system can't keep up, something like that, where it hindered you from racing. And so it started off with that for reliability. I wanted to be able to get in the car more and spend time in it. And then it ultimately broke down to where just the cost. I mean, especially all the Subaru guys, we know that the motor's going to go. It's going to let go, especially when you're pushing big power and you're on the track. And it's expensive. I've thrown 2 rods and I've had the car catch on fire a couple times. And it's if I couldn't work on my own car, there's no way I could be in this sport. Yeah. And so those are the 2 biggest things: getting seat time and just keeping costs down.
Cost of consumables and just make it so that you're worrying about like getting things you want, like the big tires and the Hoosiers, versus like scraping the budget together just to get the car running again, and then kind of like whatever's left over is your tire budget, or if you even have a tire budget.
It's funny because
that's why. Oh, go ahead.
It's funny because people look at Subarus and like their first go-to mod is power, but it's somehow it's because it's cheap and easy to make power to an extent on these things. But it's also the most expensive thing to break. Like when you let's put all this power in it, and it's like, oh, and then it breaks. Like, all right, well, okay, there's $10,000. All right, what's the next thing? And it's like, it's so funny how we get caught in that trap.
Yeah, I think it's just enjoyable having a fast car. It's fun, especially like with my car. It's still street legal. Well, in Wyoming, pretty much everything is. So it's fun to rip the car around, and it's enjoyable on the street, where like now it's not fun to drive it all on the street. And it's all right. It's peppy, but it's not like the 600 horse, car it was before.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like power is the cheapest initial investment, but it's the most expensive long-term investment.
Yep.
It's like the lowest cost of entry, but like it can be this real drain on a budget long term, especially if you go like really big and you don't like address a lot of reliability considerations for the engine, and then all of a sudden it's just you're kind of chasing your tail just to keep the car running again. Whereas like you look at putting on a huge set of like, I'm guessing like 18 by 11 inch wheels in these big Hoosiers, like that seems like a really big investment, but like long term, if you can get the speed and be fast and all you have to do is put new tires on it and not stress the rest of the car as much, that actually can save you a lot of money in the long run.
Oh yeah, tons.
Are we glad that big brakes don't have rods? They just have only pistons.
Yeah.
Right. Just pistons.
Just pistons.
That's it. That's a
no
good
ring lands.
That's right. No ring lands or rods in a brake caliper.
Or bearings.
Yes. Or bearings.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, so Shawn, what do you think? I'm guessing because it was your car, it was your daily driver, it was the first thing you started tracking. I mean, that's kind of where how you started with the Subaru. Do you think that the Subaru is still like the optimal platform for doing what you're doing, or like if you had it to do all over again, do you think you might look to a different platform? Or I mean, what do you think about like where you're at, and would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I always joke about this because I think I made a huge mistake doing it with a Subaru.
Yeah.
I think Subarus have such a cult following. They're a cool car. They're fun. They sound great, and they're enjoyable to drive. But they have a lot of flaws. And when I first started, those flaws I didn't notice. And then I got a little too deep. I think like with Ryan too. You look at our cars now from when you get them stocked to now, we're too far to stop. You can't. I can't go get into the car now and start over.
Yeah.
I couldn't even fathom the cost of that. And so I wish I would have started maybe with a different platform, but I'm really thankful I stayed with this one, because if I would have been, I think like a great platform would be an S2000 or a Corvette. I think those are great platforms. They're fast. They can pick any class they want, really, and they work well and they're reliable cars. I mean, obviously all cars have their faults, but Subarus have a couple more than others. Sure. But I don't know if I would have made the same relationships and friends and new family members, in my opinion, if I didn't have a Subaru. And so I think it went a little further than just that platform being just a kind of a not a great car. But I mean, truthfully, if you wanted to go out there and stay in like a lower class, like stock power levels, and just do really great brakes and nice suspension, I think a Subaru is an awesome platform, because you can keep them, fairly reliable. You got to put a little more money into them for oil cooling and like a better sump and stuff like that. But I think it's still a great platform on the lower side. If you got the budget and the know-how, you can do the higher end stuff. But obviously, even the higher end guys, I mean, look at Life with their GTR. That's a great car, but they still have those same problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, obviously we're all Subaru people. So I think that like the community that is a huge thing with Subarus. There's like the people that are into Subarus, they are into Subarus, and yeah, it is a great community to be a part of, for sure.
Definitely.
But I think that like every platform is going to have its issues. I mean, unless you're buying a turnkey race car that was built as a race car and engineered as a race car, any kind of street car they're going to modify, you're going to have to address something here or there.
Most definitely.
It's like, think about the Corvettes and like all the overheating issues that they've had on some of the newer models, where it's like one of the guys that comes by here, Mike Pettiford, who races Corvettes, got one of the new ones. He literally could only do one hot lap before the car started to overheat.
Yep.
But I think that like with Subarus, the key point is everything that we've touched on earlier, which is like you said, there are issues with the Subaru, but once you know what those issues are and you can address them properly, then that takes them out of the equation, and the car can be reliable. And there is just something when it's all working right. There's definitely something fun about the Subaru all-wheel drive platform, and how you can get the car to be so light with the all-wheel drive. And it's definitely a mixed bag. But if you stay in like that T3, T2 range and don't go for crazy power, then I think that's definitely for most of us the sweet spot for these Subarus.
Yeah, and like you were saying with the all-wheel drive stuff, it's just amazing how well they function. I've had other guys with like you were saying, like these proper built, like true race cars out there, and I come out of a corner and they can't catch me out of the corner just because of how their all-wheel drive system works. You get a couple good diffs in there and stuff, and these things are just, it's like riding a bull, because you come out of that corner, you can floor it and just wrestle a little bit, and those things, they hook and they go.
Yeah, the center differentials, and you start putting a good rear diff back there, and everything is start talking. Yeah, I've always laughed at like when I had my Matt DCCD. The Matt DCCD just creates grip where there just didn't seem like there was grip there. Like, oh no, and like, oh, okay, yeah, that was nothing. That was barely an inconvenience, And so it's super fun. Super fun.
Go ahead, Scotty. You were going to say something?
Well, I was just the whole picking a different platform. I mean, if I had to do it over again, and I don't know if I would have picked a different platform, simply because of the fact I think there's something really fun about embarrassing people in a Subaru. It's there's just that. Well, I've been to Utah. I've seen the Lamborghini Trofeos.
Yeah.
I've seen the amount of money in some of those cars out there, and just embarrassing people in a Subaru is fun. It is just one of the funnest things that I think I've ever felt, because people do not like losing to Subarus.
No, they don't.
Yep. Well, there's something that's kind of, I mean, especially in your case, Scotty, I mean, your car isn't like super wide, like, you know, like Shawn's car is, but when you're seeing like Corvettes, and then there's like this Econo box with a big wing on it, and then like Corvettes and BMWs and stuff, I think a lot of people, like, it just sticks out like a sore thumb sometimes, where it's like, that doesn't even add up. That doesn't even compute, but it does. Obviously, that's why we do it, obviously. I don't know. It's fun to do it that way, but I don't know if that's why we do it. But I mean, it is fun to just like have the car sitting in the paddock, and then it's literally these Subarus in the middle of like these actual, I don't know, designed as sports cars that have been modified even beyond that,
Yeah. Well, and it's you see a lot of these bolt-ons, but what's bolt-on aero parts, but what's really cool is now the technology and the design involved in like wings and like some of the front splitter technology, it's trickling down to the point where it's attainable, and there's enough information out there as a DIY person. You can put a splitter on the car and get it to be pretty darn functional without having to put the car into a wind tunnel or anything like that. But it's like, it's like somebody with one of these like factory built race cars. You see, something like Scotty or Shawn Subaru or whatnot, where you've got these things that are bolted on, like they look like they were made in somebody's garage because they were.
Because they were.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, but they also work. This is not like somebody that's got a giant rear wing on a Civic that's, on stock wheels and just driving around town. There's actually a purpose for a lot of these things put on the car, and they actually make a difference, and they make the car faster. And if you discount that, then that's a lot of where the shock factor comes from.
Oh, definitely.
Well, and speaking about aero, sorry, go ahead, Dussex.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I got something to bring up later, but I want to tie it in with super reliability, but later.
All right. Well, so Shawn, I wanted to ask you about aero, because with 315s, huge tires, huge mechanical grip. And it sounds like you've had an opportunity to kind of rework the car, and it sounds like a lot of that opportunity has been put into developing the aero package.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was that because you had, the car needed some work and you had the opportunity to change a lot of things, and so you could, or did you get to a point where you felt that if you were going to go any faster, that was the next area that needed to be addressed?
It was kind of both. After my wreck, I had to replace parts. They were pretty well gone. So, but there were things I wanted to change anyways. I had the Cognition wing, great wing, but a little bit of drag and not as efficient as other wings. So I wanted something better. Always have. And this gave me the great opportunity to go with something different. I went with an AJ Hartman dual element swan neck. And then same with the splitter. My other splitter was because Cole hooked me up with there's only two ever built for a Corvette Pirelli, I think, car. It was a splitter that I had a guy add on to fit for my car. And it was a cool little piece. It wasn't super wild, but it definitely did not survive the wreck. So I got Spade Sport built me one that's ridiculous. It's huge. The car looks very silly, but it's super functional. I've always wanted to go bigger. Before I went for looks, and I was that guy where I'm like, I want the car to fit well. But now you look at all these other Time Attack cars, and a lot of their stuff I don't necessarily think looks the greatest. I look at like the World Time Attack cars, and some of those it's awful, and but they're functional. And so I had to kind of remind myself about that I needed to
choose function over form.
Yeah, not what was pretty. So it was, I essentially just wanted to go bigger, and I kind of always have. So I had my splitter I built to the rule set and as wide and as far out forward as I could go. Did some end plates on that, and so it was kind of, I've always wanted it, but now I was forced to do it.
And so is that the biggest changes, the Spade Sport front splitter and then a much bigger rear wing?
Yeah, those are the biggest. I put a stock bumper back on. I used to have a big cutout in the front just for airflow. So I left it pretty much stock, but made some way better ducting on it. Kept the same flares, but I reworked everything so that the tires aren't, in the airflow anymore. Pulled them out a little wider. Did a little bit bigger side skirts. I got rid of the windshield cowling, so I don't have wipers or anything anymore. but I built a block off there. So it's, it's flush with the hood to the windshield. Anything I could do to make the car slippery, because I always knew the car was terrible on the top speed wise. I mean, I think I hit 158 on that front straight before, and that was 600 wheel horse.
Wow.
And the Lamborghinis are obviously going much faster, but they're less horsepower. And it's just, the cars are slippery. And so I'm trying to give the car all the benefits it can, because they're just a brick to begin with.
Absolutely. I think my top speed on the front straight on the outer track, I think I hit 128 once.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just one of those things of like, I would get such a better run out on like out of turn 15 onto the front straight, and like a better run out to where I could pass people, but then cars with just more power would just walk away from the brick. It's like I was standing still. See, that is one of the biggest things. I did the same thing last year, just trying to make my car more slippery, because they really aren't. They're bricks. They're not aerodynamic at all.
No.
So anything you can do in that
challenge.
Anything you can do in that area is going to be huge. I'm excited to see the car.
It's fun looking. It's ugly right now, but I'll get it one color, and it'll be pretty good. I built a new diffuser for it too. It was surprising, that little accident. It wasn't even a big one, but man, it touched almost every corner of that car and messed it up pretty good. So I had to do a lot of new stuff.
Man, well, but taking your time to do it the way that you want to do it, not scrambling to get the car back on the road and cutting corners. I mean, it sounds like there should be some significant improvements when you bring the car out again.
Yeah, I really hope so. I know there's a couple corners out there that are real high speed stuff, and that's kind of my favorite. I love high speed corners, and there's a couple out there that I've always had to lift a little bit in fourth. I'm really hoping now with these changes, it'll just be a flat, fourth gear corner now. And once I can get confident in the car again, it'll be, I think that I definitely will pick up some time.
Nice. Or lift it fifth.
Yeah.
I think that's turn one, man. I'm kind of excited about the thought. Turn one has got on the outer loop, has got so much potential to carry speed. And it's like such a chicken shit corner for me, where you're like, nope, I can't do it. It'd be awesome just to see it just stick through there, and then you're breaking into two and then building back up again.
For me, turn one, I've always been, it is a tough one because you got to set yourself up for two. And on two, I've always had buddies. I had a great friend out there, Travis Tidball, in a Corvette, and he was a direct competitor to me. And this is what I love about this sport is he was behind me, and he's like, dude, why did you break in two? I'm like, well, so I can make two. That's why I braked. And he's all, dude, just lift a little bit. I'm like, really? They'll just lift and go. And sure enough, I lifted and went, and then I was faster than Travis. And it's like, he knew, he didn't have to say a word to me, and he gave me that pointer, and I figured it out.
Yeah.
And so, now I'm actually not scared to do that, which is not a great idea, because I'm like, I can't do this corner flat. And then I found out I can't go flat. And thank goodness I have good suspension that can absorb the gravel out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the cool things about Time Attack, is that because you're just running for time, I mean, there are guys that you're running against, but I don't think there's as high a level of competitiveness, generally speaking, not in all cases, but generally speaking, because everybody's running to make their best time versus like for straight up position. It's a different environment, it's another reason why there's a big appeal to Time Attack versus wheel to wheel.
Yeah, and I think most of the guys out there that I've been running with forever, we all know at the end of the day we're getting a $5 trophy, and and bragging rights, and most of us out there, like one of my buddies, Brendan, he races with makes and models, and I've raced with him in Subarus, and now he's in the Lamborghini. He gets to run those out there with them. Wow. And even those guys, like they're no different. I got friends in little Civics to guys that are running full race cars that will give you the exact same advice, invite you over for dinner, stay at their houses, where it's this crazy little community where I don't know if you would get that in any like wheel-to-wheel pro race group guys. They're secretive. They're hiding all their stuff because obviously there's more to gain, but not with us.
Well, it's you're pitted. You're literally pitted against each other as a driver. Yeah. And it's just you're kind of, everybody's out there running their own race. Just you all happen to be on the track at the same time. It's more of an accident than with the wheel to wheel stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Dussex, go ahead. What were you going to say?
So is it crazy that Shawn is still a wet sump car? With
I
all
wouldn't say
that
it's
grip
crazy,
and now
but
all that aero. I think it's pretty crazy. It's always been one of those things that is like, well, Shawn's still wet sump. Maybe I don't know. I'm too scared. I'm at the point where I want to be dry sump, and
Yeah,
I'm
no,
making the money to invest.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth, and I had the Killer B set up, their basic one before, and I know it's not the best setup. I know that's why I've had bearing issues and stuff before. I mean, it works great. It really is a good product, but I don't think it's optimal by any means. And I was worried with this new Aero what it was going to do, and I don't know, remember like 6-7 months ago, I posted up asking because IAG has a new version, and so did Killer B. What was the best version out there? And JJ from IAG, I had a small sponsorship from them like over a year ago. And he says, "What's your address?" And he shipped me their whole new stuff. I'm like, "Why are you shipping me?" He's like, "You're sponsored." I'm like, "JJ, I'm not sponsored anymore, man. That was a while ago." He's like, "No." He goes, "I still owe you some stuff, and I'm more happy to help you." And I'm like, "Cool, wow!" For the owner to come out and just offer this stuff to me was amazing. So that's what I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try this and see. I mean, it makes sense, but ultimately I do believe, a dry sump is the way to go. With Subarus, though, man, watching some of these top level guys and their reliabilities, even with, a dry sump setup, it does make me a little nervous. So I'm just waiting for someone to make one that's perfect. And I know, yeah. So I think that's definitely going to be my next go-to. And it'll probably be right when I blow a motor up. So when I'm like, okay, it's going to be dry sump.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it doesn't come to that. But that's. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's funny with Subarus because I think if people think like you're saying, there's issues with the Subaru, and certainly engine reliability is probably the first thing that comes to people's minds. But the oiling system as being part of that is probably not exactly what comes to people's mind first and foremost. It's probably pistons, ringlands, that sort of thing. But
all
but bearings, But it's like there. If you start with a car that is factory dry sumped, you have such a leg up. Like when you get to the point where you're going to be touching maybe 2 Gs in a corner, or heck, even more than that for sure, because there's so much going on there with the side loads and the oiling system that basically the dry sump removes that variability. But if to take a dry sump and put it on a car that didn't come with it, there's some heavy lifting involved there.
Struggle.
But
it's a real struggle.
But I mean, we this is something that we've been wrestling with a little bit, and we're finally, I think, in a decent spot. So,
I mean, where we have to put it, where we have to route lines, everything that we had to do in order to even get this thing to work. But 3 years later, I think we kind of have it figured out. But I mean,
still not 100% sure.
It's still
more testing. More testing is required.
Yeah.
But it's
proof of concept. You're in the proof of concept phase.
Right.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's one of the reasons that we put it on the car. I mean, we're still on a stock engine on the Pegsby car, and it's not making a ton of power, but it's because it's like I know that oiling system is a real pain point, and related. The PCV system. The PCV system is tricky on these cars, especially when you're getting high G loads, and especially when you're getting up into that 400 horsepower range and above. Keeping the oil in the engine where it needs to be, and not dealing with or properly dealing with the issues you can have in the PCV system is hard. It's not as easy as it would seem, and things like a good air oil separator or catch can are not as much of a slam dunk solution as it would seem once you get to these high G loads and stuff like that. So that was kind of the inspiration, is like, all right, let's jump down this path and figure all this out, because I know that this is a puzzle. This is going to take a little bit of work. But then once that's all sorted, then it's like, okay, well, if you want to add 150 horsepower or 315s and more grip, I'm not nearly as worried about it from an engine reliability standpoint. But still, we're getting closer. I wouldn't say we're 100% there, but we're getting close. And very grateful that we've got, the guys at Roger Clark that have been kind of really steering us, because they've got a ton of experience with these things. And once we stopped kind of guessing or like, and really just going, all right, just tell me what we need to do. Like, I'm not going to guess anymore. Just like, in fact, just show me a picture. Show me a picture of exactly what we need to do. And then once we got all the lines run exactly like, this is what we do on all race cars. Okay, perfect. And now that we're doing that, now it's finally starting to work as we expected it to. But
yeah. When you were talking about the PCV system, I was actually I had like the Crawford AOS, and I modified it to like flow a little better, have bigger fittings and such on it. But after 4 or 5 laps, I would fill that thing up pretty much, and it vented to another catch can, and that thing I was emptying it all the time. And so I actually tried that Killer B, the oil control valve.
The valve,
that was the biggest game changer for me when it came to preventing filling up a catch can. I mean, obviously it doesn't fix the solution of keeping oil in the pan, but I wasn't draining a quart of oil every session.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Do you just pour back in?
Yeah. No. Not when I'm running ethanol, I don't.
Yes.
No, yeah, I know.
It's funny how little things like that. I mean, it has a big effect on reliability, because like you're out there driving, you want to have seat time, and it's like, how much maintenance are you going to have to do between, like, from this sessions to this session, just to get the car ready to run again. Like even little things like that. I mean, it can really kind of get in your head, just as far as like how many steps, how much work I'm going to put in between sessions, and then go out there and still drive. And it's like, it makes it a lot more labor intensive, and it can kind of make it so that you're not able to really think about what you're doing. Like, instead of looking at your data and thinking about how you're using the car or how you're driving, instead you're playing around with your catch cans, your aero separators, and trying to figure out your oil levels. Changing the timing belt. Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets interesting.
Me and Scott have done that. We were out chasing, trying to get that last little bit of lap time. I knew that was in the car. And then one of my cam gears started coming apart. And I'm like, we got 15 minutes to swap this cam gear out. And I mean, me and Scotty busted that thing out and went out there, and all the car tried to do was just kill us. But it was nuts. I mean, like you're saying, like, that stuff you don't even think about. Like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. Like, the more stuff you can like take off that task list, the more room it gives you for like that emergency. We got to do a timing belt swap right now, which is totally stupid. It's insane to be even having to do that. But
that does not sound enjoyable, like, at all.
No,
it was hot, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so, like, one of the things, like, me and Ryan, like, he's running the Super Taiku car, and my car's been pretty reliable this year, but we've spent more time just going over data and not thinking about the cars this year, and it has been amazing. You get out of the car, you're just like, I'll check pressures, maybe I'll put some fuel in, and okay, now let's go over data for the next 35-40 minutes, without stressing about anything. And I think that's been one of the biggest things about, like you talked about, reliability. If you can make these cars to where you get out, you just have to do a couple things to prepare, and then eat lunch, have a snack, and then go over data, hang out, do anything else besides stress on a car in between sessions. So,
man, that's
definitely
the dream for sure.
This year, in somebody else's pro built race car, definitely spoiled.
Yes. Well, and so Shawn, I'm curious. Do you have a guess how much of an impact this new air package is going to make? Do you just have any kind of inkling yet, or is it just too hard to guess?
55s?
Ultimately, that's my goal.
Wow.
I want a 55 on outer. The funny thing is, when I ran that 57 flat, it didn't feel fast, and I made mistakes. So I know the car before is faster. Like, even with me, I mean, obviously as a driver, we all have improvements. We can always get better, always. And I know that car has more in it where it stood. And now I know that car should be a 55 car with no problem. And with a really good driver, I think there's no reason it wouldn't be lower than that. But 55 is going to be my goal for sure.
Man.
Very nice.
What about two 13s at Coda?
I need to get out there. I know. I do. And even I just got married a couple of weeks ago, and my wife is like, I don't know why we're not doing it. And so she's pushing me hard too. And it's always been tough. it's been a couple things for me. It's like financially, it's tough to do it, but man, I'm not gonna lie. Like, and I think a lot of race car guys are this way, where the anxiety and the stress it causes me is like overwhelming. And I am so jealous of you, Ryan. Like, you're so upbeat and positive constantly, and like you're living the dream of like us race car guys. You're doing it. Like, you're not being a pussy. Yeah. You're out there doing what all of us want to do, but we're scared to do it. So like, I wish I could have that same character and mindset you do, because I need you. I have you and Cole. Like, why are you doing this? Let's go. Like, even Cole, there's been times he's like, put it in the trailer. Let's go. Like,
shit. Yeah. Next time he says that, dude, just put it in the trailer. You got brother in his arms there. I mean, between Cole, obviously, he's seen the track at a faster speed than anybody else who's ever seen it. There is going to be, and we got Subarus. I think we're going to bring the hill climb car out there too. I mean, we're hoping
spoilers.
Yeah. Oh shit. Okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm pushing for it hard.
That's the plan. That is the plan. We're talking about super.
You say spoilers, but we literally talked about this two podcasts ago.
Of course, yeah, we did.
But they don't know that yet because they haven't seen that yet.
But
they haven't seen this yet either.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, good point.
Brothers in arms, man. Brothers in arms. I'm telling you, like, I'm shooting for a 217. I really want to beat JC's time, but I mean, I think that I think if you go out there and you got the little crazy button and you can pick that track up fast. It's so fast and flowy like that, like Utah, that it'll feel like second nature. I think Utah is such a good kind of like tempo to kind of build you up for that track. It's not like, a tighter, more technical track. There's so much room out there, and you can just pin it and get that tempo right, dude. You're just going to fly out there.
Yeah.
And if you can go 180 miles an hour.
Oh, is that all? Just 180?
Well, I mean, that's the thing about that track is top speed is, I mean, there's two big speed zones there that I think, that's where JC left a lot on the table. His car's still kind of draggy. And I think he was maybe 160, and that's kind of where, that's kind of the same top speed that Jackie Ding went, and they both ran 217s. So I know that that is a limiting factor there too. So.
For sure.
So I'm keeping my aero package small just to try and make sure I can break the 160 mark up there, hopefully.
Yeah.
Which is it's faster than I've ever been.
we're definitely thinking of, or we're planning to go to Super Lap early next year. And man, if we can get other Subarus out there, I think just the more Subarus that we can get out there, the better. Just like I said, get the Subaru brethren out there so we can support each other and hopefully have fun at the track.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's just there's a lot of people that are talking about that event. I mean, it's like it went off this year, but I mean, it was the first time back, and I don't know. I think that there's like all of a sudden this renewed excitement for next year. Like there's a lot of people that seem to be setting their sights on COTA early 2022. That could be a fun event.
Yeah,
definitely. I think it's definitely going to be a fun event. And instead of people saying, who's Shawn Murphy? They're going to be like, fuck, I want to see what Shawn Murphy does. Like, Shawn Murphy's a badass. He makes me and Scotty look like little peasants, man. I mean, it's so awesome. Just, dude, 57s at Utah is just bonkers, man. That's a big deal.
I mean, so the amount of time me and Dussex have spent talking about what you and that car will do out of COTA.
Guessing. Yeah. Now you've got to bring it out there to just kind of like, all right, well now
no pressure,
No pressure.
Exactly. You had anxiety or performance anxiety before, I'm sure we're helping, but
well, and I just want to ask, so Shawn, is it because it's a new track somewhere that you haven't been? Is that kind of like where it's just it is not as easy to just kind of pick the car up and head out there as it could be?
You know what? Honestly, it's all mind games for me. It's all like personal. For me, we had this this race last weekend, and I could have got the car out there just to test it, but one of the main reasons I didn't, and it's stupid because it just holds me back, is I didn't want to disappoint, and I didn't want to go out there and just test the car out. I wanted to go out and put a fast time down, and for myself and for just my friends and my buddies, and I wanted to show them what the hard work paid off. And it's really a big mind game for me to go out there and like go to COTA and then like everyone like, wow, Shawn did a 220. what the hell? And it's like, and I always do that. Even when I go out to Utah and I race, I've been on that track hundreds of times. And every time I go out, I'm like, man, I'm going to bomb it. I'm going to do so terrible. And I go out there, I'm like, wow, that was fastest I've ever gone. Weird. And so I always do it to myself, really. And I just need to get out of that mindset. I just really need to just quit being a pussy about it and just go.
It's funny how little things can just kind of creep up. I mean, I think that's totally natural. It happens to the best of us. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those, like, expectations are difficult to balance, but then, like, new environments, new tracks, like learning a new track, there can be a lot of stress associated with that. Yeah. I hope you can work your way through it and get out there. I know you can, but
yeah, definitely. And you're right. Like, it's the new track is scary, and it probably would be if I didn't have the connections I do, but I can literally just, like with Ryan and Cole and any of my buddies, all those guys, I've never even met, but we're friends on Facebook. We're just car dudes. And there's not one of them who's going to be like, no, I'm not telling you. And like all of you guys give me pointers and the secrets, and we have nothing to hide. And so I'm actually not too nervous about a new track, just because I have insiders for every track in North America.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How many tracks have you driven on, do you think? I mean, would you guess?
No, that's the bad part. Like, I've been to other tracks and like just cruised around on my own car, but I've only been like competitive at Utah.
Okay.
I've never been anywhere else with that. I've done motocross other places and stuff like that and drag racing, but never had that car anywhere else.
Sure. Well, I mean, for one, it would be cool to get you out to Dakota, and cool for you to experience a new track. But one of the motivations could also be that, like, if you go to a new environment, you might figure something out at this new track that looks, you're learning the track from scratch. You're learning, these different corners, but maybe you'll find a little kernel of an approach or knowledge that you can bring back to a track you're more familiar with and take a corner a different way and find some time that way.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah,
man.
I think you'll find too that the environment is so driver centric. It's so much more fun. Like, I feel like that Jason does an amazing job on, like, making us feel special, like, these are the people you're coming out to watch. Like, these are the people you want to see. These are like, and it doesn't feel like it's like a performance thing, like a performance anxiety thing. It's more like let's take our hats off and honor what these guys are trying to do, because that's what Super Lap Battle is. Super Lap Battle is more like the homage, like paying to, the excitement of Time Attack as much as it is seeing what kind of times, like, the top cars are going to do, because they're talking about what the slowest cars are doing. They're talking about what everybody's doing there. And it's such a cool environment, and it's really super, super chill, especially once you're there, that, man, it just makes you feel so much more special than just like a NASA weekend. Like, it's so cool.
It seems like every time I watch videos, they seem that they build people up. Like, they're always, no matter, like you're saying, the fastest guys, like when they watch Cole, to the second slowest dude out there, like, it's the same enthusiasm. Like, they're stoked on everybody. So it seems like such a cool environment. I've been to them, never raced one, but I've been with Cole and that, and it's a cool ride. It's cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it all kind of comes together and works, and you're able to get out there. I'm sure it's going to happen at some point. It's inevitability. It's just going to happen.
There's no choice. Yeah, I need to put my big boy panties on and get out there.
Give it like 2 years. Like, you don't have to really get serious about it for 2 years. Like, just go out there, see what it's all about.
6 months.
On year 3, then that's where you can say, all right, I'm ready to put down the time. Yeah, or 6 months, whichever works.
It's funny because I told Shawn before, I was like, man, I really want you to come out. I think it'll be awesome. I think you could be the fastest Subaru. I mean, but if you don't come out, I'm going to be the fastest Subaru. So you better come out so you could be the fastest Subaru. Otherwise, I'm going to be the fastest Subaru.
And I'm okay with that, though. So
yes, that's true. I mean, that's exactly how I feel too.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, as we're kind of winding down here, Shawn, just definitely want to thank you for coming out and making the time to get on the podcast with us here and talk about your process. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And hopefully we're gonna see you at some of these events. I don't know. We've got to get all of our cars together and get out there ourselves. But hopefully all that's going to happen here in the next handful of months. We'll see.
Definitely.
It's always a
if nothing
process.
else, we'll see you out at UMC next year with NASA. So
yeah.
Sure.
Hopefully, actually, I'm doing a little private track day they do in 2 weeks to do some testing, and then I'm going to make the last race of the year to test the car out some more. So
very
nice.
cool, man.
Heck yeah.
Very excited to see what the car puts down, and yeah, well, and just I mean, you kind of blazed a trail. I don't think it's overstating to say that you went down the path that we all go down, and then you realize, well, maybe I needed to change some things around, and you did, and that's kind of where your car was able to set the lap times and do what you did. And I mean, it's been an inspiration to all of us. I'm sure other people out there, just like, if nothing else, to like rethink the wheel. Like, this is, don't approach a Subaru race car this way. Look at what Shawn has done with his car. Don't apply this like the most obvious formula to the car. Try something different. And so
I appreciate that.
It's very cool to see what you've done.
Definitely, thank you.
And I cannot wait to see what the next chapter is.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yes.
So I'll send you some
favorite
pics,
Subaru
Ryan.
driver. Sorry, Scotty. Yeah.
Yes.
Hell yeah. When you sent me like the layout of your splitter, I'm like,
how
many
many
4x8 sheets is that?
Dude, it's
Just
big.
so
it's
big, man.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. I'm excited. And congratulations to you and Corey. Thank you I need to tell her thanks for letting you come on here and hang out with us for an hour.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Shawn. Really appreciate it. Guys, did you have any more last questions here for Shawn before we kind of wrap it up?
I'm good.
All right. Well, again,
Thanks, Shawn.
Yes, thanks very
you.
much. Thanks for making the time. Thanks for chatting with us. And to everybody that's stuck around the end, thank you very much for listening. And until next time, as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.